Welcome to Becoming a Sleep Consultant. I'm your host, Jayne Havens, a certified sleep consultant and founder of both Snooze Fest by Jayne Havens and Center for Pediatric Sleep Management. On this podcast, I'll be discussing the business side of sleep consulting. You'll have an insider's view on launching, growing, and even scaling a sleep consulting business. This is not a podcast about sleep training. This is a podcast about business building and entrepreneurship. When Danielle became a certified sleep consultant through the Center for Pediatric Sleep Management, she graduated from the course with big goals, one of which was to leave her teaching job so that she could pursue sleep consulting full-time. As a mom of two, Danielle was desperate for more flexibility in her life, and she knew that being a sleep consultant would provide her with that flexibility while also allowing her to continue to make a positive impact on the lives of others. A little more than 6 months since becoming certified, Danielle has officially left the classroom and hasn't looked back. Danielle, welcome back to the Becoming a Sleep Consultant podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you again.
Thanks for having me again. I'm really excited to be here.
So take us back, give us a brief introduction, tell us a little bit about you, why you decided to become a sleep consultant, and then we'll get into where you are now.
Okay, so I am a certified teacher. I've been teaching for several years, primarily with younger students. I've always taught first and second grade. In recent years, I've done a lot with social emotional learning. So that has really become my passion when it comes to working with kids, over the past few years. When my son was 4.5 months old, we actually hired Jayne, and she helped us get sleep back on track during the pandemic, which obviously was a crazy time for everybody. And add a newborn to the mix, there was nothing easy about it. And so fast forward a few years later, my daughter was born and I was bored on maternity leave. I was able to apply everything that Jayne had taught me with my son. And I just looked at my husband one night, we were watching TV, and I was like, maybe I should just become a sleep consultant. And I was half joking. And then I texted my mom and she was like, obviously. And so ever since then, my goal was to quit teaching and do this full time. And here we are. I left my job officially this past June, and this has been my first full-time month of sleep consulting.
I love your story. It just makes me so proud. And I love that you started off as a client and then a student, and now you're still, I think, in the infancy of your business. You are absolutely just getting started, but I love that you were able to gain momentum and traction quickly, and that you're able to sort of turn this dream into a reality. It just makes me so happy. So talk to me about the first month or so when you first launched your business. How were you putting your name out there? Maybe tell us about your first paying client. Give us a rundown of what it looked like back then, and then we can talk about what it looks like now.
Sure. So the first family that I worked with was pro bono, just to gain some experience and momentum. One of my really good friends, actually a former colleague of mine from New York City, is now a full-time influencer and content creator. She has no kids. She's not even married yet. So what she focuses on has nothing to do with the space that you and I are in. But even so, she was able to give really good advice. And she was kind of the person who pushed me to focus on social media, at least in the beginning. She knew it wasn't my thing. She knew I wasn't excited about that. But she was like, you know what? You never know. So many of the influencers that my friend works with are young moms, and they have, infants and toddlers. So my friend actually wound up writing me a little script, and she said, this is how influencers like to be approached. Tailor it to your needs, fill in the blanks, and just see what happens. So I reached out to 2 influencers that she works with, and I wound up working with both of them. And my first paying clients came all from these influencers. The deal was I gave them a 2-week consultation in exchange for promotion on their feed and their stories. And it worked very much in my favor. And so for the first few months, I'd say all of my paying clients came from Instagram. And so at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, I really have to keep up with Instagram. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't like it, but it's working. And so I just kept at it. And then I wound up starting to get clients, from word of mouth and other referrals, which was, the goal. And so at that point, I was like, I'm going to slow down Instagram for a little bit. I was still working in the classroom. I was still teaching at the time. I couldn't give my attention to everything the way I wanted to. So I figured if I'm going to give my attention to anything, it obviously has to be my full-time paying job and the clients that I'm working with right now, let alone, my family. So I kind of paused on social media a little bit. I picked back up. And then I wound up working with an influencer who has several followers, more than the other influencers I had worked with. The most recent influencer that I worked with has 1 million followers. And truthfully, the number of followers I have learned doesn't really matter. But in this case, it really helped. And she was amazing. She wound up, printing out the sleep plan that I wrote for her and kind of just showing the back of it so people could see tangible papers. Like, she wrote this for me. And that influencer is the one who set my business on fire, without a doubt.
It's so exciting. It's so funny when you share this story because you really are that person that wanted nothing to do with social media. I know that about you. I know you personally. I understand your personality. I understand that you're the type of person that didn't want to be on Instagram, but I guess I applaud you for stepping outside of your comfort zone and being willing to accept the advice of this friend of yours who felt really confident that she could help you. I think that's
Yeah,
great.
it definitely came as a surprise to literally everyone I know. Putting my face on stories is the last thing that I would ever want to do. I definitely have taken a long social media break this entire month of July. I'd say I haven't really posted anything. My website is about to go live, or it did go live today, actually, which is really exciting. So there was a little bit of rebranding happening there. So I figured, well, that's all happening. Let me pause. I am about to sign on my 10th client for July. So truthfully, I haven't really had time to be posting the way I was previously, which is fine. I haven't needed to do it this month. And, actually, I remember it back, I think it was April. You may have posted something. I don't remember which of the two Facebook groups it was. It may have been both, where you were mentioning, you were having a little bit of a slower than usual month. And instead of just like moping around about it, you kind of, got into action and did whatever you had to do in order to get the ball rolling again. And that I feel like has happened to me, so I feel like if August feels slower than July, then I'm going to get on there and do a Q&A, because truthfully, like, that has been my tactic. Every time I've done a Q&A, it's really because it's been a slower couple of weeks. And for me personally, the Q&As have always led to sales.
That's so great. Are you
Yeah.
willing to share a little bit about the advice that your friend shared with you about how to approach an influencer? What do you say to them that draws interest back to this potential partnership between your business and theirs?
Definitely. So one of the influencers that I reached out to, I had been following for quite a bit of time. So I kind of knew what she was about. I knew about her daughter, who at the time was 3 months, and the other influencer I hadn't been following at all. So I made sure to hit follow before I then reached out so I could kind of get a feel for what she was all about. And so, you're kind of like, you're cold messaging them, and not everybody likes that. And so I first introduced myself. I didn't even say at the beginning, though, that I was a pediatric sleep consultant. I simply stated my name. I've been a follower for, X amount of time. I've always resonated with the posts about X, Y, and Z. So if they posted about a restaurant that I had been to, I was like, I loved that restaurant too. Thanks for making the recommendation. Making a personal connection there, always congratulating them if their child is younger, congratulating them on the birth of their child. And then I go into, similarly, I'm also a young mom, and not only do your posts about X, Y, and Z resonate with me, but really your motherhood posts are really why I'm here now. And I explain that I have this young business, I'm trying to grow my business. And if you're interested, I would be more than happy to offer you this service valued at the number in exchange for whatever the exchange would be. And that's where I end it. Like, I really try not to ramble. It's really an introduction, a personal connection, why you follow, here's what I can offer. Do you want to work together? And that's it.
And you have found that the answer has been yes? Or do you feel like you reach out to a lot of influencers and maybe a small handful of them say yes?
I have reached out to five in total, and I have worked with three out of the five. I would say one of them did actually reach back out. And the only reason I had reached out to this one originally was because she had been posting, oh my gosh, my girls are up at this hour and this hour. And I kind of observed her stories for a couple of weeks before I even made a move. And so I eventually did. And then they went on vacation and they came back and I was sleeping through the night again. So like it was kind of a moot point. I don't know what would have happened. The other one never got back to me. But the formula for all of them is the same.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you said, so like, obviously you're getting clients from these collaborations. What about like, you've worked with a handful of clients now, you've had enough sort of success stories.
Mhm.
Are those families now getting to the point where they're sharing your name with others?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. One of the clients has actually like become a friend because she has referred so many families to me. It's like at first I sent her a thank you gift. I was like, I talk to her all the time now because every week she's sending me someone. I mean, it's been really, really nice. I actually had a really interesting experience where I wound up almost working with a sleepaway camp because there were a number of 7-year-old girls who were not sleeping through the night and they were waking their counselor. It wound up not working out in the end because I just didn't have time to drive up to Pennsylvania. But I definitely like it could have been a really interesting experience. I feel like a very unique one for sure.
Yes, that would have been fascinating. As somebody who has a 7-year-old at sleepaway camp,
Yeah.
I would want you up there if the girls were keeping my daughter up at night, for sure.
I mean, and I think back to like my own experiences at sleepaway camp. I remember so many girls in my bunk just up all the time. And it was like nobody's fault, but it did raise a question in my mind. I'm like, oh, have these girls never been sleep trained before? Like, is this what sleep is like at home?
Right.
You know,
Or, right. Like, are they having a hard time because they're in a strange place? They're in a bunk with
right,
10 or 12 girls? Or did their parents send them away without healthy sleep hygiene? And now camp is
right,
having to navigate this for 4 to 7 weeks.
right. Definitely, for sure.
Talk to me about like, do you have a certain case or family that you worked with that really just sort of makes you smile, like a good success story that you would be willing to share?
Yeah. So I actually was very afraid at first to work with toddlers. I don't know if it's because I have toddlers of my own and, it can be scary to to engage with the toddler. They have actually wound up being my favorite clients of all time. I love the age. I think it's so fun. For me, my first toddler experience as a sleep consultant was with this little boy. He was turning 4. He had never slept through the night as an entire life. Not once in his life had he slept through the night. And as you can imagine, his parents were incredibly skeptical because 4 years of no sleep is a very long time. And to suddenly put all of your trust and pay all of this money to a woman that you don't know who's telling you, I can get your kid to sleep without a doubt in less than 2 weeks. They were skeptical. And I'd say, and it didn't happen overnight. For this family, it definitely took quite a few nights, which is also for me very stressful because it's not always the case. And I didn't hear from them for 2 days. And all of a sudden, I'm like checking in. I'm like, is everything okay? I haven't heard from you. Feel free to reach out when you're ready. And they text me. They're like, we are so sorry that we have forgotten to text you. Life has just been so amazing. And he had been sleeping through the night for like 3 nights in a row. And they just forgot to tell me because it felt so natural, like they were suddenly living their life and they had forgotten for the past 4 years. Everybody had been utterly exhausted. And I feel like they were just soaking in all of this family time, all this connection time. And despite the fact that I hadn't heard from them for a couple of days, it was just a testament to really what healthy sleep can do for a family.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. I used to be scared of toddlers and preschoolers also. I think when I got into this line of work, my kids were young. They didn't have any sleep challenges as toddlers and preschoolers because they were sleep trained as infants, and we always just held really firm yet respectful boundaries around bedtime and sleep in our home. So I never had a
Right.
kid climb out of the crib. I never had a kid who wouldn't stay in bed because that just wasn't an option in our household. It just like never even occurred to our children that that was even going to
Mhm.
be a thing. And maybe if it did, we squashed it really quickly. So I was really intimidated by supporting families with, 2-year-olds that were in beds or 3-year-olds that were climbing out of the crib. That felt really scary to me. But I agree with you. It's so fun. It's so rewarding. I love that I often interact with my clients. I don't know if you do that as well, but like
Yeah.
I'll send them videos or I'll get on FaceTime with them. And I just love empowering little 3 and 4-year-old kiddos, and their parents are blown away by the fact that they listen to me and that I
Right.
can help them to teach their child to listen to them, and to get everybody on
Right.
the same page and to realize that sleep is not a bad thing. Like sleep feels good. Rest feels good. When you wake up rested and you have a full night of sleep, like 3-year-olds can recognize how much better that feels than the alternative, which is being up 4 to 8 times in the middle of the night.
Right. And I also think that not only is it empowering for the child, but for the parents as well. I find that when I'm working with toddler families, I'm really working with the toddler for the first few days, and then things kind of get better. And then for the remainder of the 2 weeks, it's really a lot of parent coaching, which wasn't the intention, obviously, for the parents. But then they start asking all these other questions about how do I do this? And what about this? And the potty. And I'm like, it's all about control. Like they don't even realize. I'm like, you just need to regain control. And that for me has what it's come down to for so many of these families with toddlers and preschool age children.
Yeah,
Lots
I
of parent
think I
coaching.
think you and I are like in a very similar season as far as our businesses evolving. I'm also doing a lot of sort of off-label parent coaching because
Hmm.
I get these kids sleeping through the night and then they're like, that's amazing, but we can't get our kids out the door in the morning to get to camp.
Right.
Or
Right.
my kids are refusing to sit at the table for dinner. And it's all the same stuff, right? Like it's all the same
It's
thing. And so
all
we
the
can
same.
apply the same sort of setting expectations and follow through that we implemented at 8 o'clock at night to, 8 o'clock in the morning when it's time to get out the door.
Exactly. And I have to say, just speaking to that transition piece of getting out the door, one of the things that I have found so rewarding about going full time with sleep consulting, obviously, like the flexibility piece is a no-brainer, it's a given. But I have to say that there was so much joy sucked out of my life prior to this that I didn't even realize was being sucked out of it, right? Like I knew I wasn't happy at my job, but I didn't realize just how much the rest of my life was impacted because of that. And my entire home feels so much lighter now because it's like, I don't want to say because the mom is happy, everybody else is happy. That's obviously not how it works, but you feel it, right? Like my son can feel that I am so much lighter and so much less rushed because I don't have to get to school in the morning, right? And like, yes, it's summer, but it's going to continue into the fall, which I'm happy for myself, but I'm really excited for him that, we don't have to feel as rushed in the morning. Yes, you're still getting to school and you will probably be the first one in the carpool line because that's just who we are, but it's not because I have to be anywhere.
Yeah, you and I think, are very similar people.
I think so.
I'm also first in line at carpool every single day, just because that's the type of people that we are.
Right. You're not getting to a 9 to 5 though, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I think to your point, the way that you feel so much lighter now that you are doing work that you love and you're not working in a situation where you are maybe just like burnt out and overworked and perhaps underpaid is very similar to the feeling that I think our clients feel when they come
Hmm.
out of that fog of not sleeping through the night for so many weeks or months or years. I think sometimes they don't realize how tired they are. They don't realize that the lack of sleep is creating a situation where they're feeling depressed or low
Right.
or just unmotivated and uninspired to show up as their best version of themselves as parents until they finally get a few full nights of sleep. And then they realize, like, wow, I was really in a bad way and didn't even realize it.
And I have to say, one of the clients that I actually just wrapped up with, when we had our discovery call, she kind of put out a disclaimer and was like, is it okay if I have been just diagnosed with postpartum depression. I said, of course, like there, first of all, like you don't need to ask for permission for anything, right? Like, of course it's okay. I will obviously keep that in mind. Like it's, they're totally separate things. And what I didn't say was, let's see how you feel in 2 weeks, right? And then the 2 weeks ended and she was like, I think I can go off my meds. And I was like, and I wasn't going to say I told you so, obviously not. But I mean, it's just like sleep impacts literally every area of life.
Yeah. I have a few clinicians who specifically support moms who are struggling with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, and they refer to me. And, they come to me with postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. And I can confidently say that 9.5 times out of 10, it's actually sleep deprivation that they're struggling with.
Exactly. Without a
And
doubt.
and once they start sleeping through the night, the fog is lifted. They're not feeling so anxious. They're not feeling so depressed anymore. And then they can actually work effectively with their therapist to get to the home stretch and really feel like they're in a great place. And it's an amazing, amazing partnership. It's team effort getting these moms to feel like themselves again.
And I can attest to that. I was never formally diagnosed with postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. But like when I first reached out to you all those years ago about my son, I was not in a good place, right? Like I was locked in my New York City apartment because we were in the middle of a pandemic and my son was not napping, right? So and we couldn't go out anywhere. So I was a mess. I mean, I was a mess and I don't even know if I admitted it to anybody or even to myself until after the fact when I was like, wow, he's taking naps now and I can do whatever I want for 2 hours, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked a lot about like all the amazing things that are going on in your business and how it's all making you feel. Is there something or anything that's feeling like a challenge to you in your business? And how are you working through that?
I think at this point, summer, I really wasn't expecting my summer to pick up this way in terms of business. I was honestly expecting to have a slower summer intentionally. My son is starting a new school. So I was kind of trying to just lean into that and give him, extra attention and love as we make that transition. But I think the thing that feels scary to me, and I don't know if you feel this way ever, but you just never know what each month is going to bring. Right. For me, prior to this summer, it was always like I would have really big, busy starts of the month, and then the rest of the month would be kind of like crickets. And this month has just been like signing on new clients constantly, and same with last month. And I'm always just like, is that going to be August? Is that going to be September? Right. Like, I think the uncertainty piece of it and the unknown is a little bit scary to me. And it's like, what is my strategy going to be when that happens? Because the truth is, I don't want to have to lean on Q&As on Instagram every time. So I'm curious, like, what do you do in those situations where if you feel like you're having a slower month or a slower couple of weeks, what do you do in order to pick up again?
Yeah. So I've noticed I think this is something that all small business owners struggle with mentally because we don't earn a salary. We're not getting a steady paycheck every week or every other week. So I think to some degree, this is just something that we have to figure out in our own brains and just become a little bit more comfortable with the uncomfortable. But I started working with a bookkeeper maybe a year and a half ago. And what she and I noticed is that she tracks both my income from sleep consulting and then also from Center for Pediatric Sleep Management. And what she noticed is that every other month in sleep consulting, I have like a big month and then a slower month and then a big month and then a slower month. It's been this way for a year and a half. It's very consistent. And I think that what that shows is that in my slower months, I feel that slowness and I spring into action and I start talking to more people. I start having more conversations. I start working on generating some more business. And then it shows the following month. I think that that's probably what's happening. And it's almost probably at this point, second nature for me. I'm not even realizing that I'm doing it. But what I do is when I have slower months, instead of wallowing and worrying about where my next client is going to come from, I just start to have conversations. And first of all, that fills the time and it makes me feel like I'm being productive. And it doesn't just
Right.
make me feel like I'm being productive, I actually am being productive. And I do think that the productivity also eventually leads to generating more income. And so I
Right.
just get into these waves of highs and lows, and I become comfortable with that. And it's probably at this point second nature for me. But I'm also a little bit of a hustler at heart. I like to work hard. I don't like to sit around with nothing to do. That doesn't feel good to me. So I like to spring into action in my business. And
Right.
so, it doesn't feel that hard. But yes, I think that mentally, that is a challenge. And it's interesting that you say that the beginning of your month is busy and then the end of the month is crickets. I wonder if that's because if you're looking at, whether it's your Stripe account or your balance sheet, if you have
Right.
QuickBooks or whatever, and in the beginning, you're hustling a little bit to generate some income, and then you get busy, and then you don't have time to
Right.
continue to market yourself. So, like, your cycle is the same as mine, but mine is on a 1 month cycle and yours is on a 2 week cycle. Like, maybe we're
Right.
doing the same thing,
Right.
and you're just spending the first month, the beginning of the month, working hard because you're like, it's a fresh month. I got to do well. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to
Right.
make connections. And then that starts to pay off. And then you get too busy to do that for the second half of the month. Um,
Right.
I think it gets easier as you gain confidence when your reputation sort of speaks for
Build.
itself. And,
Yeah.
I am at the point in my business, and I think you're probably really close if this hasn't happened to you yet, where even if I just sort of sit around and do nothing, a handful of people will be reaching out to me every
Yeah.
single week to get onto a call with me. That doesn't mean that they're all going to hire me, but I'm getting inquiries regularly just from friends of former clients who got my name and they're struggling and they reach out for a call. So the more families you help, I think word of mouth starts to do the work
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I've certainly noticed that over the summer. The other day I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't had a discovery call in a week. And then just the other day, two people booked for this morning, right? So, I mean, you kind of just have to trust the process. And like what I've been doing clearly has been working. It doesn't mean I have to stop, I should stop or slow down. I have to like keep up. But yeah, I think I definitely agree with you. I think that it's funny, something that I noticed now that we're in summer and I'm not teaching is, I go to Trader Joe's, once or twice a week. And when I was teaching, it was either on a Sunday morning or like once my kids went to bed because I obviously couldn't go during the day. And now I'm going during the day and there are all these moms and babies there. And that is so not the scene I had ever been encountered with or engaged with at Trader Joe's. And suddenly I'm like talking to all these moms at Trader Joe's or another grocery store. And I'm not like trying to be creepy, but sometimes I'm right there. I'm like, oh, what a cute baby. And then if they continue the conversation, obviously I will continue. But even just a couple of weeks ago, they're like, oh, thanks, but it would be nice if she slept. Like that would be even cuter. And I was like, well, would you believe me if I told you she could in 2 weeks? And she was like, what do you like? Obviously so confused. But that was it. Like that's all I needed to say for them to book a call. So even just like having that time to go to Trader Joe's during a time when I couldn't normally go has been clearly very effective for me.
That's amazing. I love that
Yeah,
story. So your website is launching as we speak. You made it the first 6 months in business without a website, or did you have no
without,
website? That's amazing.
which was really surprising because given my personality, I wanted it up and running like before I even like signed up for the course, right? And then I clearly didn't have one and it was fine. And then I was like, should I have paid all this money for a website? I mean, I should have. Like, I'm excited to have it. It will definitely be helpful in the long run. But yeah, I didn't have a website up until today.
That's amazing. Well, congrats on the
Yeah.
launch. Do you want to share your website, social media, anything else before we wrap
Yeah.
up?
Sure. So my Instagram handle is DG, like Danielle Greene, DG Sleep Consulting. And my website is also dgsleepconsulting.com.
Well, congrats on your early and rapid success. I'm not
Thank
surprised.
you.
I'm not surprised at all. And we'll have to keep checking in. I feel like, if you've had this sort of success in 6 months, I can't wait to see where you are another 6 months or a year from now. I really truly believe that this is only the beginning for you. And it just makes me really proud as somebody who I helped when you were way back in the weeds a long time ago. And to see
Thank
now that
you.
you're supporting other families just makes me so happy.
Thank you. Couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Becoming a Sleep Consultant podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much to me if you would rate, review, and subscribe. When you rate, review, and subscribe, this helps the podcast reach a greater audience. I am so grateful for your support. If you would like to learn more about how you can become a certified sleep consultant, head over to my Facebook group, Becoming a Sleep Consultant, or to my website, thecpsm.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you will tune in for the next episode.